Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to another episode of the Polygon Pilgrimage, and today we are continuing with our Battle Royale series, and as you can see here, I've fleshed out this building a little bit, and I'm going to show you how I did it. I'm going to talk about how we went and get all these measurements and all this cool stuff. So you can see I entered the building here. It's a little dark now that I hit play, but the building has 2 floors, and we have doors and windows, and everything is all laid out, and it's all thanks to this magic ratio we got up here. I'll show you this. Let's run over here, take a look. Math. No, not crazy math, right? Don't worry about it. I'm going to step you through the whole process. Let me walk in here once again now that the light has kind of come in. We can see what we're talking about. We got stairs, we got windows, we got doors, we got everything all laid out. And I'm going to show you the basic principle and I'll leave you with those tools to go ahead and do this whole process yourself, okay? So let's go ahead and get started and figure out how we're doing this. So as you can see on the screen here, I've got some footage of some PUBG. So the trick here that I took is to load up a previous match. You can load the replay to that match. Then once you have the replay loaded, you can actually fly around as this omnipotent camera and you can see all of the buildings and the whole terrain and everything from what you just played on, but you can just take your time. And basically what we're doing is we're going to take some pictures. And what I did was with the video, I just paused the video and I took screenshots of that video. You can do it with all kinds of tools, with Photoshop, with GIMP, all kinds of tools, whatever you have available to you. Take some screenshots and then load them up into Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop and we're going to take a look at what I did and I'm going to explain the whole thing to you, so don't worry, okay? So let's hide my notes for a second here and we're going to do it like as if we didn't know what was going on. So as you can see, I have pictures of this building from all 4 sides, right? And what I tried to do, a couple of things to take a note is try to maintain the same distance from you to the wall as you did on each side. That way the images will line up nicer inside of your software. You can see I have these guidelines here to line up where's the top of the windows to the top of the windows, where's the bottom of this bar here, where's the top of the bridge of the roof here. So try to make sure you have the same distance so that they all line up nicely. Okay, so what I did was I took a solid, side, each 4 sides of the building, and I zoomed in here. Okay, so as we discussed in our previous, we know the size of our door right here, right? So we know that our door is 1.5 units across and 2.625 units high, right? And what I did was I made this image here the size of the door. Now, if I go to in Photoshop here, I have this measuring tool, and if we measure that, you'll notice top to bottom here, it comes out to be 161 based upon what I drew this line here, but let's round that up to 160, right? So let's bring up my notes here, and we'll just paint directly on these notes here so we can follow along, right? Okay, so we know that top to bottom here, so if I draw a line like this distance right there, we're going to say that's 160. Okay, so again, it was 161, but we're going to round a little bit because we want things to be nice and even. So now I'm going to measure across. So click here, click and drag and hold and go across here, and you'll notice it lands at 79. Well, again, we're going to round a little bit and we're going to call that 80. So if I do this and go boop to there, we get 80. And now it's going to try to mess up. So I'm going to draw up here. 80 is that distance there. Okay, so now we have 80 by 160, which is approximately 1 by 2 if you're doing that ratio, right? What I need to find out though is, based upon this, I know how big my door is, so how does that correlate to the number of pixels in this image? And then once we have that, now we know how to make our ratio work. So what I need to do is find a number that would work. So I'm going to bring over my calculator here, and I'm going to say 80 divided by, and I know the distance in world units here is 1.5. So if I hit equals on that, it gives me 53 and some remainder. Now this number will be different based upon the size of the image you have, how close you were to the wall, etc. So your mileage may vary here, but this is the formula, and I'll show you the formula in a moment, okay? So my magic number here was 53. So what I did was, as I'm going around my little world here and I'm measuring things out, I would get a new distance, like say this one here. 232 is the number of pixels from here to here, right? So then I go here and say 232 divided by 53 gives me 4.37, so say 4.38. So what I would do is round that up to say 4.5, because we only want to work in quarter amounts. We only want to work in 0.25, 0.5, oops, 0.5 or something like 0.75 sometimes, 0.75 like that, or whole numbers of 1, etc. Okay, so you're going to salt to taste a little bit with this. So you'll measure it out, get your number, and then you're going to have to make some changes to that ratio. And so, for instance, I measured things out like these doors and windows rather. This window here is 128, so I made that 120. This distance being 60, this being 80. So 80 for me worked out as 1.5 for that distance, right? The same thing we have here. So I just said, okay, that's 1.5. That's about as wide as a door. So it's not exact to this measurement, okay? We're kind of fudging it a little bit because we ultimately want to build this into a modular kit so that we can snap buildings together and have reusable parts, right? So up here, you'll see I did some of that math where I started to just translate from myself. Instead of whatever this distance is divided by that number, I just said, okay, that's going to be 3 units. So then, okay, I know this is going to be 3 units, so that's the same size as that window. So here you can see 242 became 4.5. Similar thing to here, like I was just saying. 140 becomes 2.5, 290 here, and then I just keep going across. And what I did first was all the horizontal numbers. So once I established those horizontal numbers, see, you can see this all the way across, going all the way across, just figuring out all those numbers. And you can see I skipped the windows, because it's the same thing every time, right? So once we have that number, then we go back into our project here, and you'll see this is our ratio here, right? So X is the value that we want to get, right? Over our ratio equals Y, and then the Y is tempered. That's what this means here. So it's not quite whatever the number comes out to be. It's salt to taste. So you have your number like, 260 or the 160 or whatever divided by our ratio gives us that number. So that's exactly what we just did here. So this is just a mathematical way to describe what we did here. So if I go back over to this side where we were doing this 232 again is an example, right? 232 is our X divided by our golden ratio, 53, gives me 4.3, so I'd make it maybe 4.5, round that up, right? So then we go back over here. So 232 goes there, 53. So I can just change that out if it makes it easier for you to see. So we go to the R here and just say, for me, it's 53. So then the X here is whatever I put in. So 232, which I'd have to make this bigger. So let's just say it's, 80 or some number like that. 80 divided by 53 equals some number, and then the parens with the star here, asterisk, your mileage may vary. You need to change that to whatever, works for you for your project, right? Okay, so given that, all you have to do then is apply that to your building here. So if you look here, I have my door frame, so we know that that's a certain size. See the previous video for that. When I come over here and start to edit my building here, you'll notice that these numbers here are based upon that. So here, this 2 units and like 3/4 of a unit, because you can tell here it goes to that mark and up. So that 2.5 units to the right of that door frame, I should be able to go here and say 147. So 147 divided by 53 is 2.77. So I changed it to 2.75 again, because we're doing the 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, pardon me. So then you have 2.75. I kind of round down a little bit in this case. And that gives me 1, 2, and then 3/4, almost a full another unit there. And bam, there you go. So once you've got that in place, you're going to apply the same logic upwards. And I have a reference sheet in front of me. I'll try to remember to make a diagram, put it on the screen here for you, but I'll read it off to you here. So I was working on my small windows here, and I've got those 80 across by 120 high. The double large windows are these guys up here that became those 3 units across. So that's 160 by 120. So all the windows are the same height, the 120 by 120, and these became 160 across. The floor separation, which is this thing here between the distances, that changed a little bit, but I wanted the bevel to be certain sizes. The distance from the window to the top is another measurement that I made. The skinny windows are some of the smaller windows, and the openings, how wide is the opening? The roof, I also measured. I haven't built the roof yet. That's going to be another episode, but I have that all set up. The foundation down here is 40. From the foundation to the bottom windows is 60. So some of those numbers are numbers that you'll learn from doing your math here and from just measuring out. And it works the same way. So here, if I take my measuring tool and I say from this distance, and I'm going to hold shift in Photoshop to go up to the top here, And that gives me minus 56, so I just called that 60. Okay, and then I said, okay, how far is it from the foundation to the bottom? And that's where I got this negative 38, so that became my 40. So that's how I got some of these distances here. And I would pick one if you have a situation, which you might, where you weren't completely flat onto this wall, but say you were completely flat onto this wall, or vice versa. You can see there's a slight pitch to this. So you're going to have to fudge a little bit. So what I did was, with these markers here, I would just use one as my ruler and then just apply that to the rest as you go across. And it's not going to line up perfectly. See, there's a few gaps here, but ultimately the idea is once you have a certain setup, then you know, okay, this has to be a certain way. For example, this one here, you can definitely tell that it's kind of pitching to the left because the door looks a little slanted. These look a little slanted. You can tell here by this image here that this is curved this way. So clearly this is not a completely straight on image like I said you should take, right? So I know that these are not going to perfectly line up. If I were to try to go in here and measure, you know, things are not going to line up perfectly. See, I can't get a perfectly straight line. There's a little bit of a gap there. So how do you deal with that? Well, the way you deal with that is you say, I know that these must be evenly spaced, right? That's the way that they build windows, right? So what I did was I just kind of figured out the math for one and figured out the math for one gap. And then you just apply that to the others. You don't have to measure anymore because you start to learn certain building blocks that this whole thing is made up of. Obviously, this is the same as this. And then, you know, these windows are the same. So you don't have to remeasure 60 times. You just measure all of the main pieces and then figure out the distance in between. Most importantly, make sure that you get one solid side all the way done, or two sides rather, because you do need this side and then this side. So for example, if I go back to the scene here, this was the first wall that I built, was this wall across here. So I needed, I needed to make sure that all of this was set up. And then I went to this side next and said, okay, let's make sure this side is all set up. So then when it came time to do my third side, which is over here, I knew that I already had this distance figured out, right? So when I was placing these windows, I said, okay, I know this has to go relative to this window here, and it's about this far. Well, then I know I can temper that by saying I only have X amount of distance all the way across. So placing this window, I know I have a certain amount of fudge either way because I know that these have to be in place. So you can start to do things based upon each other. And then with that information in place, you can get things like, here's the triple windows. So for the triple windows, what I ended up doing was this window is obviously the same all three times. The gaps between them, for me, ended up being the same width. So I just said, how many total units do I have? I have one window, two window, three windows, and two units, two spaces rather. So that's 5 units. So I just said, okay, this is 5 units across. And you can double check that. You can look at this nice texture that comes with Pro Builder rather. So I have here, that's a whole unit, whole unit, whole unit. Yep, it checks out. So you can double check yourself while you're working here in the space. And always feel free. This is your game, your world. So if you don't like something, please feel free to change it. And the nice thing is you don't have to use Photoshop. Like I said, you can use any kind of tool that you like. You can also do all kinds of different games. It doesn't have to be PUBG. You could do Fortnite. You could do, you know, any of the battle royales that you're interested in, or any game. It doesn't have to be a battle royale. But just this principle is we're essentially translating pixel sizes to real world sizes. And that's where the ratio comes in. We just have to apply it to our ratio. We're saying given this amount divided by some ratio, we get to a number that we're going to kind of fudge. And we can, you know, mix it down or up depending upon our needs. And again, even if you follow it and you don't like the way it ends up, just push that window over a bit. You know, you're the creator in this world. You have the ability to do so. So I hope you guys have enjoyed. I'll show you the math here, and I'll just kind of pause on this for a moment if you wanted to write this down. I will be providing this ratio, and I'm going to try to provide this. I think I figured out how to do the asset. I have to export this as an asset for you guys to look at this and be able to figure this out. I will have future episodes where I talk about doing the interiors, which is basically the same process. It's literally just looking at each wall and figuring out the distances. The stairs are a pre-built thing that comes with Pro Builder. You just have to figure that out. These stairs, all I did was I just took the bottom of the stairs and angled it to match this. I'll show you my references in the next video, or the video where we do the stairs. And then I just put the doorways in place to kind of help me measure it all out. So this whole building is one of the buildings, the one you saw from PUBG, from the original map. And so all of this measuring was done using the same principles. So just apply the same principles, repeat. And if you do the exterior first, that also informs the interior, because obviously now this window has to line up on the inside to the way it is on the outside, right? That's the way windows work. So doing the outside will help you kind of build the inside. So again, I hope you've enjoyed. In future episodes, we will be continuing with this. We'll also paint it. I'll show you how I made the textures for it. We'll make the roof. And maybe, if we're lucky, we'll get to the point where we do simple interaction to open and close doors and that sort of thing. So you'll have a fully functioning level here that you can then take these principles and move forward and make new buildings. Now for our patrons, we do have some extra special goodies, not featured in this video, but they will be available for you guys. We have some really nice fancy doors, some hinges. You guys will get all the scripts early, and we do have 2 buildings in work, this one and a sister building to it. So you'll have both of those as full templates that you can just use to your heart's delight, and should be all set. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, guys, keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.